smartest guys around. We're about to break it down like they won the game a million times.
Well, actually, they didn't really win the game at all.
Survivor know it knows. Survivor know it knows. Stephen Rock went out and down. Got the game all figured out. They know it knows.
Yes, that's right. The Survivor Know-It-Alls are back together again here to talk about episode number 10 of Survivor 45. Rob Cesternino back here with Stephen Fishbach. Stephen, how are you?
I'm great. This actually was a thing. Last week we joked Thanksgiving feast of an episode for a very straightforward boot.
Right.
This kind of was a Thanksgiving feast of an episode, quite literally, where they had a Thanksgiving feast
Yeah.
in the episode. And I feel like this has got a lot of interesting stuff to talk about. I'm still kind of like
Great.
figuring out where I stand. I'm like, I'm on Twitter. I'm talking to people. I'm debating.
You're in the Twitter streets.
And
Yes.
yeah, people on the Twitter. But every time someone says something to me, I'm like, you know what? That actually is a good point. And then, then someone else says the opposite thing. You know what? That's a good point too. This is a very interesting episode.
Very interesting episode. Happy to have you here to talk about it, and looking forward to getting your takes, because I think you're a little contrarian from where a lot of other people are on this episode.
Well, I feel like the initial take, and this is what, out of the gate, and this is why it would have paid for me to podcast last night, was like, oh my gosh, Emily, what a great move.
Don't tempt us with a good time.
Yeah. What a great move from Emily. Like, wow, like player of the season. And I was out on the move, right? Out of the gate. I was like, this is silly. Like the Rebas are killing it. Like Emily's shooting herself in the foot. Now all the Twitter commentary I'm seeing is this is silly. The Rebas are killing it. Emily shooting herself in the foot. And I'm like, maybe actually that's wrong. Maybe like the counter opinion is actually the wrong opinion. So I really want to I do not have a firm opinion, but I really am looking forward to talking it through.
Okay, let's talk it through here today. I spoke with Bruce earlier today on the exit interview to get his take on things. So if you missed that, be sure to check out what Bruce had to say about this. Did you check out any exit press today?
I saw a little bit of the exit press. I mean, mostly I just saw, I think I skimmed Dalton's thing. I didn't want to be ignorant. And he, it sounded like Bruce was, great attitude, was mostly upset that he didn't have more, right? Like more non-awkward, goofy moments, which understandably, hey, I understand that
relatable.
Yeah. But had a good humor about the whole thing. And, I was rooting for Bruce. I was disappointed when Bruce lost the immunity challenge, because I
thought he had it. I thought he was going to go for 3 in a row.
I did too. And then, then you're like, oh my God, is Bruce going to pull it out? Is Bruce going to hit the record? But yeah, not to be.
Yeah. So Bruce had said, in case anybody hasn't listened to the exit interview this morning, he really did feel like that him, Emily, Katurah, and Jake were going to vote together as 4 and then take out the Rebas there in that spot, as they were going to be having their votes split between him and Jake. He felt like this was a golden opportunity, but it is kind of wild to think that based off of the show that we saw, that Bruce felt like, okay, I've got Katurah,
Well, and here's the thing that I did see in the exit press, Bruce believing that he did have Katurah. And we've certainly seen whenever Katurah interacts with Bruce, she is like positive, she is respectful, she is like eager to engage with him. And I think because we see so many of her confessionals talking about how much she hates Bruce, we're like, oh, obviously Katurah hates Bruce. Yeah. Bruce doesn't see that side of Katurah, right? Bruce sees the side where she's, pumping him up a little bit, not the side where she's rolling her eyes. Separately, Bruce also thinks that he has a relationship with Julie, right? We know that the Reba 4 are tight together. And I think one thing that this season has not showed us, and we're only seeing sort of in kind of ancillary detail, is everybody saying, well, obviously I'm close with the Rebas. Like Emily thinks that the real alliance is her, Austin, and Drew. Jake thinks that he and Drew have a real alliance until Emily says, no, Drew doesn't like you. Bruce thinks that he's super tight with Julie. Katurah, we see go to Julie over and over again. So we see, the Rebas are doing an amazing job of cultivating these relationships and hiding the fact that they do have this tight force.
Mhm.
And, I don't think we're seeing them. I don't think we're seeing on screen all of the obvious time and care that they're putting into maintaining these relationships to the point where these people truly believe that that they're part of the real alliance. And so I don't think it's that crazy. I mean, we know last week the vote was supposed to be Bruce, he won immunity. The previous week the vote was supposed to be Bruce, he won immunity. We know that. Bruce doesn't necessarily know that. Bruce doesn't know that he's target number one over and over again.
So I think he did kind of last week when we saw that he sort of had that wake up call. I think that when he saw that Kelly went home, I think that sort of clicked in his head that, it would have been me if I didn't win immunity. And so I think he did try to at least change things up and at least concoct that story about how that he had given his idol to Kelly. And so, I think he knew at that point he was playing from the bottom.
But if you're Bruce and someone comes to you with a plan to say, hey, these Reba 4 are super tight, we should blindside one of them. Everyone watching at home thought that was the good plan. Why wouldn't, if you're Bruce,
that's fair.
You think that's a smart plan. That is the plan we should do. And you trust people to act in their best interests. And, I think what Bruce is missing is that so many people are playing with these anti-Bruce blinders on, Katurah can't even for a minute, countenance the possibility of going along with some Bruce move, right? She immediately sells him out as soon as he comes up with this idol lie, which, wasn't the greatest lie, but she immediately sells him out. And I mean, from the way that Jake bought it and Drew bought it, if Julie and Dee were hearing it third hand from Drew, it's possible that lie could have had real momentum. If Bruce told Dee, maybe she wouldn't have bought it, but for it to make its way to kind of percolate via Jake, it did, it actually seemed like it could have legs. So, I mean, if you are Bruce and everyone is saying, hey, the obvious plan here is to blindside one of these Rebas, you're yes, that is the correct plan in this position for us to put aside our differences. I might not play my idol in that spot either.
Of Bruce.
Yeah.
That I have to say, looking at it from his perspective, is it too much being results oriented to say, okay, it's the final 8 and that everybody who piled their votes onto Bruce last night, that Bruce and the vote split against Jake. Is it fair to say that 3 people made the wrong decision last night in terms of obviously that there will be a final 4 and that in this 7, 3 people will not be in that final 4?
Yeah. I mean, this is what's so interesting, right? So is the right move here to take out Julie or is it not? And it's so dependent on who you are. If you're Julie, it's definitely the wrong move.
Yeah.
For the question is for Emily, right? Is it the right move for Emily?
And I think for Katurah as well, because it's hard. Right. For Emily, I feel like that Emily has more outs here in terms of going with Drew and Austin, and potentially maybe if that she could, after her play with the reward, maybe is there a path with her with Dee and with Julie potentially? But honestly, for Katurah, I'm having a hard time seeing the outs for her to potentially get to the end.
But obviously Katurah, thinks she's got something with at least Julie and Dee. I mean, is everyone playing to be the 5th Reba here, I think that Jake probably doesn't realize the intensity of the connection between Drew and Austin and then Dee and Julie, and again, when you're in that situation and you're having these connections and people, you feel like you're building bonds. I mean, that bromance montage was one for the books. That was an all-time Survivor moment.
Yeah.
You're okay, this is real. We're doing this. You just don't know, where someone's true allegiance is. And I'm sure Katurah feels the same thing. The challenge is, with Katurah's anti-Bruce, fixation, it's almost hard to, she's so committed to not voting with Bruce and to voting him out that she's not even going to allow that possibility of that happening, right? Not even going to look down that path at all. And I agree, that's probably a game losing choice for her. But that's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, I think for Katurah that it seems like that the idea of putting like letting bygones be bygones with Bruce, I feel like is a better path for her.
Yeah.
The only way that I see a path for her is if this group that went on the reward challenge, if there is this all women's alliance that ends up coming together with Dee and Julie and Emily and Katora, and they end up being a 4. But I don't really see any other relationships. Like it seems like that Katura and Julie have had like some kind of a bond, but other than that, I haven't seen it in the show.
Yeah, I mean, it is frustrating that Katura, until this week, Katura's like edit has been her storyline. I'll say has been exclusively fixated on Bruce.
Well, and
I
also
feel like
she had a
Katura's
relationship with Caleb, also from before
right.
Caleb went.
Yes, that's right. But I feel like Katura's probably the most rootable person left. Like if I knew more about Katura, I would be cheering her on. Like she's the character on the show that I like most gravitate towards in terms of how she's playing the game. I mean, that's not true, not how she's playing the game, but just her general sort of demeanor. I really like, because she's like both great at like being present and just her whole relationship with Bruce, where she's able to make him believe that they're tight allies, and then like behind his back, like absolutely rolling her eyes. It's great. But I mean, I just think the more interesting question is, I mean, so for Katura, it's wrong. For Jake, probably wrong. I mean, he's clearly on the bottom. He's just desperate for not to be himself. So
for Jake, there's no wrong decisions other than just survive another tribal council. Just somehow beat and only by the grace of Bruce not playing his idol does he move on to another vote.
Well, that's why it's wrong for Jake. I mean, right. I mean, and like that's why it's like you really think Jake would have been pushing here. Especially because they didn't need, if Bruce didn't play his idol, they didn't need that many votes to switch it. They didn't, or sorry, if Bruce did play his idol, and Jake obviously knew the plan, right? Jake knew that Bruce was, Jake voted for Bruce, so he knew what the plan was.
Did he know the plan? Because I think that this might have been, what is it like? Edgardo and
not wanting the him, but he knew that. If he believed that the Julie plan was a plan, he presumably would have voted for Julie. Like, the only Julie vote was Bruce's vote. So, he obviously did not believe
I think it's actually not Edgardo. I think it was Alex and Mookie. I think that he thought that maybe, hey, okay, if it's gonna be, rather than it be a 3-3-2, let me put one other vote on Bruce. Just
that's not impossible, but I think that's a lot unlikely. I think the likelier scenario is that nobody believed this Julie plan was a real plan. I mean, the question is, did Julie know about the Julie plan? Does Julie agree to being the decoy boo?
Just on the Jake thing, does anybody trust Jake enough to say like, hey, it's going to be Bruce tonight, put your vote on Bruce? Like, who would have that conversation with him?
But he's not. But if he knows that Bruce has an idol, and he thinks there's an out by voting for Julie, and he thinks that it's likely that Bruce plays his idol, like I think he would have voted for Julie. I believe that Jake. I mean, you can ask him when he's eliminated next week. I believe that Jake is. I mean, because like as much as we're teased every week that this is the week that it's all going to get shaken up, like so far it's a pagonging, right? I mean, the only person on the jury who's not a Bello is Caleb, and Caleb was briefly a Bello. So, and he was eliminated in that weirdo tribal. So, as a proxy Bello, right? He was voted out as a Bello in that tribal council. So, to some degree, it's a full Bello jury, and there's a lot of reason to think that Jake or Katura is going to be next. So, my guess is that Jake thought that knew that the Julie vote was not a real vote, that was just something that was being sold to Bruce to get him to not play his idol so that they could vote him out.
Okay, let's circle back to Emily, because we haven't talked too much about this from her perspective. Do you feel like that for Emily, this was the right move, that it was a bigger priority to try to get Bruce out of the game rather than to try to take a shot at breaking up the Rebus?
Right. So this is like the question, right? This is like, what's the most interesting question of the episode? And so I think that, so my gut was, this is a terrible move. It's being told to us in the episode as it's a good move. Oh, look at Emily, the way she absolutely convinced Bruce not to play his idol. She sold Bruce this fake plan to vote out Julie. And we, as the audience, were like, yeah, break up these Rebus, please. Like, let's destabilize this game a little bit. And in fact, it was a fake plan. And all she was doing was trying to gain Bruce's confidence. And basically help push Bruce out the door, as was, this last sort of opportunity. Now the Reba 4 are the majority in a 7-person game. And so on its face, I thought this is a terrible move for Emily, right?
Yeah.
Why do this? You gain nothing, you potentially alienate a jury vote with Bruce. And why, like, you're missing out on your last chance potentially to end things. But that was my instinctual vote.
Mine too.
Yeah. So now I wonder though, if, we've talked about a lot and I've said a lot, the goal of this game is to just like make it to the end and be the least disliked person sitting there.
Yeah.
And if Emily does, and I was Emily does not really have a lot of options here, because nobody, in terms of like who wants to work with Bruce, nobody does. Like, that Julie plan might have not been real for anybody. Katurah hates Bruce. She immediately is betraying him. Did Katurah ever really believe the Julie plan? Would she have ever agreed to not vote out Bruce if there was a chance to vote out Bruce? Katurah too believes she has a relationship with Julie. I think that it's likely in the scenario that Katurah was always, it's got to be Bruce Jake, that Katurah never countenanced this. Jake is furious at Bruce. Like, he doesn't want to be a part of this. So maybe Jake is a non-starter. We know the 4 Rebas. So it's conceivable that Emily does not actually have those options. Like, this plan was only a hypothetical reality. It could never really happen. And so for us to be sort of saying, well, why did she scuttle this Julie plan? Maybe there was never the option of a Julie plan. And then the second issue, not because of her lack of will, but just because of how intractable the other players were. And then the second question is, even if she pulled it off, right? Let's say magically Bruce, Katurah, Jake, and Emily decide to vote together, right? 4 unlikelier people voting together. You can't imagine, but where does that leave her at the end of it, right? Like, where does that leave her next week, where, suddenly, you still have Katurah who wants to be with the Rebas, Jake who wants to be with the Rebas, her who wants to be with the Rebas. Now she's pissed off the Rebas, and suddenly she's a potential target. Whereas if she kind of, holds her cards and waits, like, maybe an opening opens. I mean, it's just like, it's and that's what James Jones was saying on Twitter. And now I was very, on the third hand, isn't there a world where if Emily truly believes that Austin and Drew are her real alliance, but is worried that about their connection to Julie and Dee, by removing Julie from the game, suddenly she severs that connection to some degree and frees up Austin and Drew to be her alliance. So there's a rationale to make it. So it's a very, I'm all over the place. I haven't come down.
Yeah, no, that was incredible. A lot to respond to. That going back to, there's a scene that's very early on in the episode where Emily is talking with Bruce and Katurah, and Emily is the one that's talking about how, like, hey, we got to talk about this Reba 4, who's making the decisions. And Emily, I feel like, comes away questioning like this group, that Bruce, he only wants to use his idol to protect himself. Like,
right.
They can't get it together. And I think that Emily kind of comes away from that, like, very early on in this episode. We saw her very discouraged. She didn't have her vote at the last one. She's like, I got to do something about this. And it's almost like this episode, she's like, all right, I got to do something about this. And then she's like, I don't know. I don't know.
Right.
This is not like gelling here. I don't know if I can do this. And so then we get the reward that she wins. And then she has this other opportunity where, who's her first pick? She takes Julie. She takes Katurah. She takes Dee. And now I wonder if she's feeling like, after a day with these women, who maybe that in some way she's like, oh, well, I have a lot of goodwill with these women. Like, I picked Julie first to get her letter and sleep in the bed. Like, maybe she kind of owes me one. And we know in Survivor that means like nothing, but maybe Emily's feeling like, hey, like, I've got a chit to cash in with some of these women. Like, if they all want to get rid of Bruce, and now do I have an option here of, okay, Drew and Austin could take me? Or maybe if Dee and Julie want to make a move against Drew and Austin, maybe I'm the third person with them. So I think that Emily is feeling a little bit like, okay, I have some different paths to go down. And so, all right, let me just take the Bruce thing out and maybe I'll get some goodwill also if I can be the person, hey, remember the Bruce problem? Took care of it. Okay. And so maybe that people are looking at her as somebody who's like a little bit more of a person who's in a better shape in this tribe.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Rob. I think that's a really, really great point. And in some ways, this opens up her options. It also opens up, um, you know, maybe there's more flexibility with Katurah and Jake now that Bruce is out of the game. Heather Cannon on Twitter had said, suggested that.
I love
thought
you
that was a
cite
great
all
point.
your sources.
I don't want to take credit for someone else's idea. That way, if I'm reciting received opinion, it's at least my original received opinion,
Yes.
And
What did Heather say?
that, like, getting rid of Bruce maybe opens up more possibilities for collaboration with Jake and Katurah, because both of them, and especially Katurah, are so, fixated on getting out Bruce. Maybe with Bruce out of the game, suddenly there's more movement there,
Yeah.
where there's, the question is, yeah. So, I mean, it's not, I agree. And, I will always watch the little clips that Tyson posts of his podcast, and he'll, the one he posted this week, him talking to Christian,
Yeah.
he said that, like, at that feast, at the reward feast, straight out of the gate, Katurah says, Bruce has got this lie about this stupid idol thing. Like, don't believe it. It's fake. I told him it's like, I know it's fake. And Tyson said, like, you flashed to Emily and she looks kind of like stricken by this. And, not for nothing, but like she immediately sees Katurah, undermining Bruce, publicly. Like, that's not the relationship you try to work with, two people who can't stand each other. So she may just not literally not have the option. I also want to give credit to Emily, because what we do see her do a lot this week, and I thought was very excellent, was she goes to people and tells them, she goes to Jake and says, hey, Drew is not really with you. Drew wants you gone. And then she goes to Bruce and says, Julie is not really with you. Julie wants you gone. And so she can be seen as the person who's telling it like it is, but because of her weak position, right? Nobody thinks Emily has power. She's the one Lulu left. She's kind of freed from the implications of that, right? Like, Jake says, well, let's make a move. Emily says, I can't make a move. I've got an okay position now. If I make a move with you, I'm blowing it up. And I feel like, and Jake's like, yeah, that makes sense. You can't make a move. I see that, So it's almost like Sandra in Heroes versus Villains, where every week she's like, Russell's the problem. But, and almost like, because she's beating that gong so relentlessly, if she does make it to the jury, in front of the jury, to the final tribal, maybe they'll say, like, hey, this was the one person who was being honest with us while everybody else was lying to us. I'm super hurt by Julie. I'm super hurt by Drew. They betrayed my trust. I really believed in them, but Emily was the one telling it to me like it was.
Yeah. She even has that moment earlier in the season with Caleb and Sabaya, when Sabaya comes to her and says, okay, well, tonight we have to vote for Caleb. And she goes to Caleb and says, hey, I need to tell you tonight, it's going to be you. And he's like, what? And she's like, no, it's you tonight. And if you don't, if you don't trust me, you're going to go home.
Yeah. I mean, the danger of that strategy is that it can easily blow up in your face, right? Like, very easily. Jake goes to Drew and says, why are you out to get me? Drew says, who told you that? Jake could easily say. Jake doesn't say. And Emily's lucky that Jake doesn't say, but it absolutely could blow up in her face. I mean, why doesn't it? Why does that work now when it's always such a high risk? Is it just like luck?
Why doesn't Jake go back and blow up the whole thing with Emily?
No, yeah. I mean, Jake is having this confrontation with Drew. They're, going tete-a-tete, mano a mano, very fun scene.
Well, it was also that Emily, I believe, was the person who blew up to Drew that Bruce's idol story was fake.
Right. So she's back channeling to everybody, but never getting caught. Why is she not getting caught? Like, that's my question. Like, so often, it is these scenes. Is it just luck? Maybe it is just luck, that, like, we don't see Jake go to Drew and say, Emily just told me that you're out to get me. That could easily happen.
Yeah. I guess so, but I mean, is there really a great danger in, like, Jake knowing that Drew is out to get him, being like the person who's like the person who's most at the bottom? It's not necessarily like she's spoiling a blind side or anything like that. At that point, also, like, Jake had been like, he wasn't talking to anybody, so I don't think he felt like, maybe he felt like, okay, well, why am I going to ruin things with Emily? She's the only person who's giving me any information. Everybody else is
Right.
just spinning my wheels.
Right. But I mean, I'm just saying you could easily see that happening. I
Yeah.
mean, we've seen people say that, like you don't just get caught in that sort of, he said, that's often why information kind of stalls out on Survivor, because people are so worried about it getting back to them. It happens all the time. I mean, gosh, I remember, Cambodia, everyone's like, Savage said that Jeremy said that you said this about Cass, like, you can't even keep track of it. And the fact that nobody is even citing Emily, even just like in a heated moment, like Bruce going to Julia, Emily tells me you're out to get me, like, why not? Like, like, how come everyone is so level-headed only in protecting Emily?
I want to talk about something that I felt like that you were saying on Twitter, and tell me if I am misinterpreting what you're saying, but I feel like you're one of the few people that has been saying, hey, shouldn't we, instead of just chastising the people at the bottom for not making a move, be giving some credit to this Reba 4 and how dominant they've been so far in this game?
Yeah, that's what I was saying at the start of the podcast too. It's like, they are destroying it. Like, these relationships that they're building, such that, Jake truly believes that his number, his Drew is his ally out here. Bruce truly believes that he's with Julie. Katurah truly believes that Dee and Julie are on her side. And it remains to be seen where Emily stands in this. Like, they're killing it in terms of fostering these alliances, keeping their own tight bonds relatively on the down low, and just making sure that everybody feels like they're part of the real thing. I mean, that's awesome. And that's hard to do. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
That's a lot of alliance mate. And that's the stuff that never makes the show, right? I mean, that's what I felt like I was good at in my first season, not so good at my second season. That's the stuff that, it's a tremendous amount of time and care goes into building those relationships. And it's hard. It's hard because it doesn't translate to a soundbite or like a brief scene, but they're doing it because we're seeing the results of it. And I think they're doing an awesome job. And it does make for slightly more boring television, but it's it's great gameplay.
Well, if one of the Rebas goes on to win, I'm sure it must be a frustrating experience to have gone out there and then played this very dominant game, but come home and be like, I killed it. I mean, we did it. We did the thing. And then the story that we see on television is the story of the people that are working to undermine the whole thing, and people are going to be rooting against it. Like, what? You did great.
Yeah. No, we had that in
Token my story.
Like, look at these dummy Timbiras, and I remember I feel like always, even with Boston Rob plays one of the most dominant games of all, and everyone's like, those morons, and it's true. It goes both ways, right? Like, they have to be morons in order for you to play the most dominant game of all time. And it was true for us in Token Sheens, where, we were putting a lot of time and care into maintaining those relationships with the Timbiras. At the same time, the Timbiras were absolutely a cluster F. So, I'm sure it's both true, right? Like, they are both playing an awesome game, and the Bellows are a hot mess.
Yeah. Speaking of Token Sheens, do you feel like that we missed out on a potential great like guys' night montage of you and JT and Coach and Tyson? Wouldn't that have been one of the great ones?
We definitely did not have anything that rivaled this montage. There was no pose off.
Yeah, like Taj and Erin like go on a reward or something, and it could have been and Debbie.
Yeah.
could have been something.
Yeah.
So all right, so of these Rebas, then if we're gonna start to like parse like who is the person who is like at the top of these Rebas, do you get a sense of who is calling the shots amongst the Rebas? The question that Emily was asking at the beginning of the episode.
I mean, it does seem like Dee gets her way the most, right? I mean, we certainly saw that last week when it was Kendra who went home instead of Jake. Although Drew also takes credit for that, right? For protecting Jake to a certain degree. Certainly we've seen Drew come into a conversation late in the game and say, why don't we do this other thing? So it does seem to be like, I would say that Drew and Dee to me read as the ones who are kind of driving the strategy. Does that seem accurate to you?
Yeah, I feel like that that sounds the most accurate to me. I think that Drew may have sort of like the most like logical approach, but I almost feel like that he's kind of like the vice president in that I think that whatever Dee wants is going to ultimately go, and Drew could have like all of like the logical arguments in the world, but I think that it's if it's not what Dee wants, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, no, that strikes me as correct. I mean, Drew is great. I know that Drew gets some hate on the social medias, but
I agree unfairly. I feel like,
he's a great narrator. Very fun narrator. I mean, I was really impressed at his like quick-witted responses to Jake. You know, I thought he was like coming up with like fully fledged, thoughtful, articulate responses in what could be like a very heated moment.
Like,
and-
you're a goon.
Well, okay, that's not, you know, not in the confessional. No, that's so in the confessional, but like more in the like Jake's like, you know, oh, I'm a mobster, and he's like, no, but you're the one telling me that I should walk away. You know, like he sort of was like actually engaging on the merits. And I think he always does a really good job of kind of laying out the sort of, you know, setting the table for us. And I think he's probably the best.
He's
of
very
anyone there.
thoughtful.
Yeah, of putting it all out. You know, is he going to win this game? I think it would be a challenge for him, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just on bio alone, but there's probably something a little bit cold about it, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, something that I've noticed about Drew in the season, I almost feel like that Drew is a person that we have not heard the other players discuss him. Like,
yeah, that's a good point.
He's somebody who I feel like he may be like a production favorite in that, you know, he is, you know, so eloquent in confessional and he's such a great narrator and does such a great job of describing things. But I feel like that there's been very few times over the course of the season that we've heard another player tell us what they think about Drew. Whereas like Bruce, we have it in spades of that everybody's like, there's not one person who doesn't tell us what they think about Bruce.
Yeah.
But I think it's been very rare to have another person be talking about Drew and like, do they look at Drew as a threat? I mean, do they look at Drew as Austin's sidekick?
Yeah.
Is he just like, do they look at him as being at the bottom of Reba? We really don't know.
Yeah. I mean, you know, and Xander, you know, I mean, Drew could be a GOAT, right? Drew could absolutely be a final tribal council GOAT. Like maybe he's the sort of like young, brainy, so like less social guy who everyone's like, yeah, if I sit next to Drew, like nobody's going to vote for Drew. You know, he's 23, he's Ivy Leaguer, you know, he's like a little bit like,
did he win any challenges?
Right. Right. Like he's not going to, you know, he hasn't had any big moves, you know, and, you know, that are obvious, that are visible to the jury. So, he could absolutely be. I mean, I could see Drew as a 0 vote finalist, which is the highest honor.
It certainly could be. Yeah. You know, I don't like his chances to get through a fire making.
Yeah. No, but someone could take Drew, right? You could see Austin winning fire making and bringing Drew to the end. Like, or, you know, I mean, I don't know. Here's a question for you though. Here's a tough question. So I've like taken, you know, my 41 through 45 and kind of like done my own, like, here's who I think would be or should be cast on the All-Star season, trying to like fulfill all of the like different brackets, you know, making sure, obviously even men and women, like, you know, a few oddball characters, you know, all the big archetypes represented. Is it Drew or is it Carson?
Come on.
You think it's Carson? You think it's like
I think it's Carson and it's
but the problem is like,
with all due respect to Drew.
No, but here's the reason why it wouldn't be.
And it's not close.
But assuming the winners are allowed, Jam and Carolyn are like 100% in. Do they cast all three of the Three Stooges?
I mean, you could put one on each tribe, like Lex, Big Tom, and Ethan.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You're right.
Now, this season is all new era All-Stars and winners are coming back too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to cast because like 46 obviously is not in the mix yet. So I'll be sending this along to, you know, once 46 is in.
Hey, if you ever want to do the off-season podcast of the new era All-Stars, yeah, I think you probably have to have all three of them back. I don't think that and look, I think that that's something that they're going to have to contend with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially if it's three tribes. I think you could do it.
Yeah.
Now, does Bruce come back? And who do you put Bruce with?
No, I think this is it for Bruce. This was
all right. Well, who's your like we need an older guy.
Oh, I mean, Jam's. I guess he's like in his like mid-30s.
Yeah,
right?
but Jam isn't the dad. He's a daddy, but not a dad.
Do you need a dad anymore? I need to find. I don't need to find. You know, I did the work. I need some prom. I'll look for it. I'll find this.
I'm so impressed with you because like
this was like when I was like looking to distract myself.
Yeah, frankly, like I thought you were above this kind of thing. It was like making all-star seasons.
No, I was sick, and I was like, I need to do something with my brain, but I'm not capable.
Parker in the chat says Mike Turner. That's a good one.
Oh yeah, I have Mike Turner in there, I think. So I think he's either in or he's a strong maybe. So yeah. Anyway, let's not go down
this is so fun.
Credit to I may have deleted it already. Gosh, so ashamed of myself that I immediately destroyed it. credit to production though. They really gave us they, especially including the thing about Julie's idol in the, previously on segment. They fully led us astray, right? They really sold us a barrel of fish. What is it? A
Bill of goods.
Bill of goods. Pack of lies.
Mm-hmm.
Pack of cards.
Yes.
Pack
Wait, do you feel like that Julie still has Austin's idol?
I think so. I mean, it's, as clarified in the previously on.
She did have it at one point, but I kind of think that, I mean, why wouldn't Austin ask for it back?
Maybe he doesn't.
Because he has two?
Maybe it's like bad.
He's like, I'll play it on you. Why do you need to have it?
Yeah. I don't know. That's a good question. But I felt like including it in the previously on, sort of gets everybody's antennae up about, oh, Julie's in danger. What's going to happen with Julie this episode? So
yeah, I don't know. I wonder if that was just a little bit of like, hey, remember how exciting last week's episode was? People had to give each other idols.
Yeah, right.
And maybe it was just sort of like setting up like, oh, Bruce is going to tell a story about how he had to give his idol to somebody else too.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I guess some people are saying Nolan in the chat says, was it on her Chiron on the episode? So I guess something to watch out for.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible that it pays off. It's also possible it doesn't pay off. And it was just a bill of goods.
Yeah. Okay. Let's just talk about moving forward then from this. Of course, the previews, not canon, but there does seem to be a little bit of a fault line where Drew is talking about Julie, Julie's talking about Drew. Do you think, Stephen, now that the Reba 4 has the numerical advantage, is there any possibility that they crack at 7?
Yeah, it would be a bummer almost because they've done it so smoothly and beautifully through the whole game. But it is true that once you sort of have the win, in a way, you're like, well, we've already won. Now we can fuck it up. They've got their 4.
Yeah.
And so they can sort of have that sense of yes, we have the power. And that's when you stop worrying, right? That's when you start future casting. Oh wait, who do I want to sit next to?
Yeah.
At the finals. And so, I mean, we've always, 7 has always been a big number for a big move. And that's why I proposed them breaking it into 4 separate tribes, and for 4 different tribal councils, only one vote counts, but none of them know which vote it is. How about that?
Wait, what is this?
4 tribal count. That way it's impossible for anyone to pull off a move. It'll be 4 tribes. The 7 of them will be divided into 4 tribal councils.
4 is one person at a tribal council by themselves?
Yeah, I guess so. 7, maybe. Okay, you're right. That's maybe 3 tribal councils, 7 people. Only one of the votes actually counts, but nobody knows. Jeff flips a coin, a 3-sided coin, and he finds out which. That's how you know. That's how we find out which tribal council.
Okay. All right. So hear me out on this. Okay. So if we have where Drew is talking about Julie and Julie is talking about Drew, and we have at least sort of the innuendo about a potential Austin and Dee, if not relationship, at least a close friendship between those two.
Right.
Does the fact that Drew is looking at Julie and Julie is looking at Drew, does that speak to that Drew and Julie are the 2 people that are at the bottom of this Reba 4, and potentially that Austin and Dee are the king and queen of the Reba 4?
Is there a showmance between all? I feel like there's a lot of teasing about this showman. Something is happening. There's chemistry.
I think that there's a flirtation, but I think if they had something, they would show it. I think that this is just a little bit of almost like a Greg and Colleen situation where I think that there's more of just implying that they have something I don't think that this showmance is going to blossom on day 19 of 26.
That's when it's, it feels like there's less pressure, we can, we've made it, we've won the game. I mean, for me, that was, it's we're here, we're at the top, and now we can relax.
Wait, and then what happened?
Now they can relax.
Yeah.
Have
fun. So I don't think that there's anything that was real out there on the island, and who knows, maybe a lot of time can pass. We love, but I don't think that there's any actual relationship that's happening, or at least any sort of actual, hey, we're a couple out here on the island. But I think there's probably, some, at least some mild flirtation back and forth. But just that in terms of the power dynamics, though, do you think there's anything to that it's actually Austin and Dee and Austin are actually 1 and 2, and it's Drew and Julie that are jockeying for that 3rd spot in the final 3?
Yeah, I mean, but because it's a fire making, right? You don't have to think about it that way, right? Because there's that fire making challenge, like you can go into 4 and not worry about that. Where that's sort of the what's so frustrating about that final 4 fire making, right? Is like it doesn't force them to ever turn on each other. Like they can go into 4, hey, we'll battle it out. We made it to 4, and now whatever happens, happens.
Mm-hmm. But I feel like are Drew and Julie both vying for that same position of like, hey, I'm the person to bring. Don't put me into the fire.
I think it's the opposite, right? Like you don't want to. It's more like D and Austin probably more have to worry about being voted out, right? Like about not being insta included in that final tribal. Like who? I mean, if you're in that group, who are you thinking? D, right? Like although, like let's talk about the Mama Julie thing. Yeah. Where Emily and Katurah all say, well, Katurah says, gosh, if you're someone named Mama, you definitely don't want to sit next to that person.
I don't think that's her name, but yeah.
Well, they call her Mama J.
I got it.
Yeah. Historically not the case on Survivor so much. Like Mama figures have been really gotten the brunt of people's ire at the final tribal.
Yeah, I thought that it was a good discussion about that, and like the Mama label, like I think did help Julie get the first spot at the reward challenge. Yeah. But as far as like getting somebody to the end and in terms of like getting the votes, no, it has not been that much of a boon to help people.
I mean, quite the opposite. You think of like Dawn and Cochran in, Caramoan, where Dawn gets all of this hate, right? Dawn and Cochran basically, very equivalent social game or, strategic games. Cochran wins more, challenges, but Dawn probably had more, had a lot of like social impact, right? Not more, but like, she a lot of the key alliances were through Dawn. And she just like loathed, and some of that has to be like, her persona, right? Or,
Yes, I think that with Dawn, though, I think it was a little bit more complicated than she was just the mom and betrayed. Like, I think that there was so much, from what I understand from people who played in that season, there was a lot of like caretaking for Dawn. Like, Dawn would be like very upset often. Many of the players felt like that they had to take care of Dawn and console Dawn. And then it was a great betrayal. Then with like, I took care of you and then you betrayed me. Like, I don't know if people are necessarily feeling that way towards
That's
Julie.
Fair. That's a good point. That's a great distinction. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, but like, just generally, Mama C, right? In Survivor 30. I mean, are there a lot of moms who, I guess Tina, someone tweeted at me, Tina Wesson was a mom.
Yeah, but that was so early on. I feel like that really just the rubric of how people even decide the Survivor games, I think had not really been established at that point in time.
Yeah.
You want to take some questions?
Yeah.
All right, we got questions here with Stephen Fishbach, of course. Future All-Star Carson Garrett wants to know, did it make sense for Emily to target Bruce since he had an idol and was only interested in playing it for himself versus try to band together with non-Reba to take out a Reba? Did Bruce's idol change this equation at all for you?
That's interesting. I mean, like, it does, I mean, is the idea that they're flushing the idol anyway and therefore are getting, I mean, like either way with Bruce out, right? The idol is flushed. I mean, this is sort of what we were talking about earlier, right? Which is that, like, does it make sense for Emily? I mean, theoretically, if that group is there and can play together, that no. But like, I guess Carson's point is because Bruce is obviously playing so selfishly, that, that why like create a group with that, and then I think that's a really smart point, right? Why like bond together to create that group when like each individual is so focused on their own selfish gameplay.
Yeah, and if you're going to move forward with Bruce, though, if you're going to be Bruce's ally, I think you have a chance to become like the new Jake of it's like, well, we can't get Bruce because he has an idol, so let's put the votes on Emily tonight.
Yeah, right, exactly. Like that's the fear. I agree.
Yeah, I think that you probably, if you have a hidden immunity, I think you do probably want to sort of like get the word out there. Like, I'll play it for anybody. I don't care.
Yeah,
like I'll play this idol for you. Like I'm crazy.
But isn't Bruce's leverage that like I'm 100% playing with for myself, therefore like you have to come up with a different plan? Isn't that like that's actually a completely valid strategy too, right? The idea that I'll play for anybody and then suddenly all the votes pile on him. I mean, my understanding, I mean, obviously he played this particular tribal council in about 6 different ways, but you know, told one valid and correct way to do that would be like, I am playing this idol. You guys have got to figure out something else. And which unfortunately Jake is there and seems okay to just be the decoy boot every week, or not even the decoy boot, but just like the backup boot. So
I wonder if Bruce's attitude really invited the vote flush of like, hey, we have 6. Let's flush Bruce's idol tonight while we can, because otherwise we're going to deal with this every single tribal council.
But that, you know, normally on a normal season, that would create the opportunity and almost the pressure to like take that window and open up you know, okay, so they're putting 5 on Bruce and they think there's 3 on Jake, or, you know, 4 on, and so let's, you know, or they do 4 and 4. So all we need to do is pull a few votes here and there, and we suddenly have the majority. If he's like, it's like such a sweet opportunity. It's hard not to take that move.
All right, let's take a question from Matthew, who wants to know, what's Emily's ideal final 3? Now, other than the inside straight of Emily, Katurah, and Jake, can she beat Austin and Drew at the end?
Yeah, I mean, that's the question, right? I think Emily has to be thinking that maybe if I play this other side of the coin, I'm the person who's always telling you the truth. These people were lying to you. You know, she gets a few crucial moves, right? Like you don't need a lot. We've seen that you don't need a lot in this day and age. If you're just like the best liked and have enough of a resume to justify the vote, you don't have to be the one in control. You know, you don't, I mean, over and over, that's what we've seen every season of us in the 40s, is that you don't have to be the one pulling the strings. You don't have to be the one calling the shots. You have to have like enough stuff to point to at the end where people can feel good about voting for you, and they have to like you.
Yeah. Honestly, I feel like that Emily would probably do very well against Austin and Drew. I think that she would win, and it may not even be close against Austin and Drew, considering the makeup of the jury, starting with Caleb, the mayor of Ponderosa, is going to be a vote for Emily. I think that, you know, Kelly,
probably
Kendra, like not going to have any sort of like warm feelings towards Drew or Austin.
Right.
Bruce may be a little salty about it, but could also, you know, respect the move potentially. And I think that Emily is going to, you know, be able to speak very well for herself up there and be able to tell her story.
Great story.
If the other Rebas aren't there, are they going to be potentially salty with Austin and Drew for betraying them? So I think Emily could potentially like get 7 votes or something like that if she sat with Austin and Drew.
Yeah, I agree with you.
He's got the best story.
Yeah, and Austin was, you know, accumulated this huge bag of stuff and seemed to be playing this like big flamboyant game at the start. Like, actually hasn't done that much with all that stuff. You know, he's got all.
Nobody knows he has it.
Right. I mean, he's got this idol. He gave it to Julie. Nothing happened with that. He's got this other idol. You know, nothing's happened with that so far. You know, he won a challenge today, but he hasn't. You know, can Austin point to, you know, so much more than Emily can point to, and in some ways that kind of argues in favor of Emily preserving the status quo, right? If she sees a win condition in the position she's in, why would she disturb it?
Yeah. I think that D is probably the one person of this 8 that I think Emily would struggle with beating in the final 3.
And what about Julie?
I think she's got Julie.
Does Jake have any upside? Like all bellow jury, like, so, we love you, Jake. You know,
last night I said this on the podcast, talking with Zach, that I think that Jake has sort of like Rick Devens type upside in that the players who are out there in the game, they may not have the most like utmost respect for where he's at position wise in the game. I mean, he's basically been the person that he hasn't actually been voted out of the game, but he really probably could have been voted out of the game about 3 times. Yeah. But I think he probably has a lot of goodwill with the jury. And I think that he's probably also able to like give these sort of like big performances at tribal councils where the jury is like really rooting for him to stay in the game against the status quo. And so I think if he gets to the end, I think he could be dangerous.
Right. Like underdog, you know, and he tried to go, you know, to put it all on the line for Bello at one point. Right. So he had that, at least that sort of the effort. Right. So, you know, he tried to save Caleb. Is there a story for Jake? I mean, Jake's whole narrative has been sort of the Owen narrative, right? I was, so you could see absolutely
It
Jake.
didn't go great for Owen to get to the end.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like you could see Jake at the end as a final tribal loser for sure. I mean, if Emily against Jake and Drew, like let's look at that. I mean, like Emily sweeps, right? I mean, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. I think it would be very good for Emily. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see a couple of more questions with Stephen. Okay.
So to that end too, like maybe it makes sense for Emily to keep Jake around, right? So some of the not making a move, some of trying to, right? The danger of letting Bruce play his idol is that then Jake goes. There's a lot of virtues to having Jake in the game too, right? Instead of Bruce. Are there, like, what do you like, give me that from Emily's perspective? Like, if you're Emily, do you want Jake in the game or do you want Bruce in the game?
I think that you probably want Jake in the game because I feel like that Bruce has just like reached like a level of toxicity where that Katurah is like not willing to work with him.
Right.
He also has this idol that he's going to keep playing on himself. I think that Jake could just be a number that she could direct. I don't know if Katurah is going to necessarily have an issue with working with Jake moving forward. So I think that Jake is more of like a pliable piece for her than Bruce was going to ultimately, where Bruce does not take direction especially well from the other players this season. He's going to do what he wants to do.
Right. What is Emily's best next move?
Great question. I mean, really, if the Rebas could if she could sort of like fan the flames of if there being like some sort of like internal Reba struggle where the Rebas like are not just incentivized to like, hey, we've got 4, let's go to the final 4 fire making, let's duke it out. I think that opens the door wide for Emily. So if she could sort of like help the Reba have like a self-inflicted wound at this point, I think that would be ideal for her.
Right. I mean, if they can take out, honestly, if they could take out Julie, like that would be huge because then suddenly, the game seems open, but she's operating from a stable position in that game, which is this alliance she has with Austin and Drew.
But I also think that if Jake goes next, it's not the end of the world for Emily. Like, I think that she could afford to wait another vote where, but I think that just like if the Rebas start to get close enough to the 4 that they can sort of like smell it. And it's like, oh, well, why don't we just do that? But I think that she can get by and lose Jake here at 7. And I think there's still an opportunity for her at 6 or even 5.
Yeah. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, at 5, are the Rebas going to vote? I mean, at 5, there's a good chance the Rebas will say, like, I'm worried that D is going to be the one to win. Right. Or, so maybe she sees, maybe you never like that sort of like, I'm going to hold on and hope that the big alliance implodes. We certainly have seen that strategy.
We see it a lot in Big Brother.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen it in Survivor too. And I mean, Ghost Island being the most obvious one. Where it does not work out, but she obviously is seeing it in a lot more intricacy than we are. So who knows?
Yeah. Okay. Let me bring in a couple questions that are sort of big picture questions. Hey, Stephen, why don't you take this one from Chris?
All right. Chris Fernandez wants to know, are we seeing a paradigm shift in the new era of Survivor? Small sample size, but the last 2 seasons have been a small minority alliance from day one, stick together, deep post-merge, feels old school.
Do you think that these tribes are sticking together more?
I mean, it does. If anything, it actually seems like you can have a smaller group if that small group sticks together because things are so fractured that becomes much more powerful. I mean, I think the case of the Three Stooges and the case of the Bellafour is pretty different because the Three Stooges were really helped by the fact that they were the smaller group in between 2 large groups, whereas Bella was always the dominant group.
Yeah. And
they have kind of maintained that dominance. I mean, both challenging games to play. I think actually in some ways, I mean, you can't fault the Three Stooges. They took it home. We haven't seen the Bellas do that yet. And in fact, this whole conversation, we're saying they probably, or they very well may not. But if a Bella wins, I think in this age of Survivor, it is harder for the dominant alliance to stick together and not turn on itself and make it all the way to the end than it is then almost maybe almost like anything, so if that happened, that would be a truly impressive feat.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily know what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's good to have numbers, but numbers is not necessarily the end of the story, especially here in the new era where we have tribes such as like in season 41, I believe it was the Luvu tribe that came into the merge with 6 and then ultimately were not able to stick together. I think that this is sort of like the universal equation for Survivor. Whatever is the largest, tightest group, that's going to be the people that end up having the most success on Survivor. Stephen, in your case, it could be just 2.
Right.
But whatever is like the largest number of people that are going to stick together and not turn on it. Last season, it was 3.
Right.
And 3 turned out to be enough against these other tribes that had more people. We'll find out if this Reba 4 is going to be able to stick together with 4. But it really comes down to, it's not just a number, but you also have to be on the same page.
Yeah, no, that's right. And it is. And so far they've done an amazing job.
So far.
And the Three Stooges were not always on the same page, but they were able to what was fun about them and what made them such a fun alliance is that they bickered a lot, but they always kind of came back to each other.
Well, and to say that the 3 bickered a lot, I think it's not necessarily accurate. I think that our moderator, all-star Carson, was the glue that kept
that's right.
Jam and Carolyn together.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, all right, and then on the same sort of theme. Nick Fishman says, what will the consequences be for the season where future players see how badly the Bello tribe played in the merge? Do you think that anybody will have some takeaways from just the complete collapse of the Bello tribe?
You do wonder if after a season like this, people come in with more a sense of the utility of tribe cohesion. If you see that one group that sticks together, and again, a lot will depend on how it ends, but if you see that one group stick together and sort of, beast out way to the end, that definitely motivates other people to play that strategy. Versus the other group that can't stick together at all,
Yeah, it's just easier said than done of hey, come into your game and stick with your tribe of 6. It's no, I hate these people. Yeah. I do not like them. I do not get along with them. These are horrible people to play Survivor.
I mean, that's the thing. It's it becomes so personal and so so fast that you can have a great plan for sticking it out with your group, but if you just hate someone, it's hard to move past that. Even apart from I want to vote that person out, I don't trust that person. I don't trust that if I worked with them today, that they're going to be there for me tomorrow. Stephen,
there's a question from Kendall in the chat. Could we see more pre-merge challenge throws? Now, this is something that Reba did very well. It's okay, well, they didn't throw any challenges, but when push came to shove, okay, J Maya, not part of the core.
Right.
Sifu, not part of the core. They can go. All right. We know who the real key people are, and we just need to get it down to that.
I mean, that you do wonder about those choices, though, because I mean, J Maya was tight with them. She wanted to rock with them. Sifu too, obviously more of a wild card, but from everything we saw, Sifu believed himself to be loyal, and all of the disloyalty came from these people. Now, I do think there's an element of you kind of define who you are by winnowing the way that the people you're not. So it's even if J Maya is thinks she's loyal, if you say, oh, she's not one of us, this is the core group, and then you cast her aside, that tightens that core bond.
Yep. And J Maya also had the amulet, so I don't know if that added into, okay, well, this behooves us to, if we get, that's one of the things that we need to do to be able to turn Austin's thing into an idol. So maybe that ended up working against her a little bit. Yeah. Stephen, then let's see. How about from Michelle Cosby? Did Emily lose Bruce's jury vote?
I think it is likely, although you can also see a world where because I think if someone Kelly had done that to him, that would cause him to lose the jury vote. But because he and Emily were not particular allies, you can sort of respect your enemy who outplays you a little more than you can respect, than you can want to vote for your ally. At least that's what I felt, your ally who betrays you.
I think that it really will come down to, if Emily can verbalize, like when he's like, Emily, why did you lie to me? She's like, well, Bruce, that it was the same reason why when you came back, like, everybody had so much respect for you, that you were looked up to as this like very important figure. None of us could beat you if you got to the end because that you were this legend to us. And so that was why I had to do it. Like, I think that she can smooth it over.
Yeah. Karen in the chat is saying that voting out Sifu and Jemaya also sort of mitigated that feeling that they were Reba strong, like by willing to. There we go. You just Sam just put it up.
No,
Karen,
I did it.
You did it. Okay. Well, two minds, two average minds think alike.
Well, I put it up because you said it. You started reading it.
Voting out Sifu and Jemaya gave off the impression they weren't Reba strong. Yeah, and I think that's an important part of that. That worked out really well to that they show that they were willing to work with the Bellows, and that's probably had a lot of downstream effects. Rob, I'm seeing people in the chat talk about the Matt chat. Are you familiar with this theory?
No, I don't know about a Matt chat theory. Do you want to explain it?
So apparently it's let's see, I'm trying to see who mentioned it. Apparently that since season 33, here we go. Whammo Blammo, since around season 33, the winner was always one of 3 people that Jeff talks to in the premiere episode, I guess on the mat at the beginning. Who are the 3? Who are the 3 this season?
So I don't know who they are. But yeah, I feel like that they're Jeff does that little bit of like talking, getting to know people. I feel like that was it last season that they didn't maybe was it Jam that we didn't hear from on the boat, or maybe it was Gabler we didn't hear from, like in the, like they show people on the boat and they show people on the mat.
Yeah.
I feel like that maybe Gabler was somebody we didn't hear from on the boat, but we did talk to him on the mat.
Wow. Yeah. All right. Matt chat, I believe if the statistics, say since season 33, I believe it. And I believe that's something that they would always try to do. Emily, Brandon, and Bruce. Wow. Is Bruce going to come back into the game?
Yeah. Okay. So we'll keep an eye on Emily for sure. Stephen, I want to go back to that immunity challenge from last night. You and I both seemed to took some exception to Jeff talking about how this is like something that you would do at your local carnival.
Yeah.
And while you're walking around getting a scone.
I've been to a lot of carnivals. I love a carnival.
I didn't know you were a big carnival guy.
Oh yeah. I've had fried Oreos.
Wow.
I've had deep batter,
sure.
Candied apples for sure. Never a scone.
I would think that was not your scene, a carnival.
Oh, I love it. I love a carnival. Are you kidding?
Wow.
Why not? Why not? The main, the main way? Main what? What is it called? Throughway? What is it called? It's been a long day. Yeah.
I don't know. But okay, so look for Steven at your local carnival. Now, some people have been saying on Twitter that Jeff, who lived in Washington State, I guess went to school there.
Right.
They say that scones are not uncommon at a Washington State carnival.
Like a Seattle kind of grunge carnival?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Meg says, I had a scone at a Washington carnival before. Of course, Starbucks got started nearby. They have a giant scone kitchen there.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. So maybe that's a regional thing.
Yeah, could be a regional thing. One of the other things at the immunity challenge was there's the moment where Katurah, she doesn't want to slide down into the water. Jeff talks her down. But then at the end of the challenge, Jeff says, well, all right, Katurah, now we have a tradition at the end of the challenge that everybody
punishment. I didn't realize it was a tradition.
Like, since when?
Yeah.
What is this? A tradition.
No, you're freezing cold. All you want to do is get on a warm boat. But as part of this epic tradition, I'm going to jump back in the water. And
we celebrate jumping in the water.
Yeah.
We'll pull the boat up if you want.
Least favorite part of Survivor is jumping in the water after a challenge.
Yeah. What'd you think? A nice moment.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I think that's right. Nice. The right thing to do. Nice moment. You're not going to force someone to jump in the water when they're obviously having, a severe emotional reaction to jumping in the water. I thought he handled it very gracefully.
Yeah.
In terms of saying, this is something you can do. You have the option not to, but maybe this is something you want to do with all of your friends here. And I think it was beautiful. Honestly, the things that I love about Survivor the most are the sort of, camaraderie that builds up between the people. And it was a lovely way to handle that.
Okay. Nolan wants to, do you have your scones, Stephen?
I love scones. I do love scones. If I'd known there were scones at carnivals, my God, I'd go to even more carnivals.
Go to more.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else, Stephen? Anything else on your notes?
Let's see. Mostly about being Emily, the Emily choice.
Can you give us the Fishy Award for this week?
Well, it's funny. I mean, I really was going to give it to the Reba 4. Now I'm like reconsidering, should it go to Emily? I think still giving it to the Reba 4. They have done this thing. They have made it to the final 7, all 4 of them intact. They have done an amazing job of making everyone believe that they are part of their alliance. And I think that needs to be celebrated. Fishy for all 4 of the Reba 4. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. That's a little bit like everybody going to one tribal council and casting a vote, if you ask me.
Listen, only one person will discover which is the true Fishy.
Okay. All right. Next week, you want to make a prediction of who goes home next?
Okay. So, I mean, I really think Katurah or Jake are the likeliest options. I mean, let's say Katurah probably. I think Katurah probably goes home next. I think that why would you vote out Jake at this point? There's a chance you get someone like Julie going out of the game. There's a chance it backfires on Emily, right? You could certainly see an Emily sort of not that it backfires, but just that she's the Reba 4 are dominant now. They don't need their Emilys anymore. If you were D and we're saying D is the ringleader, Emily's the person to vote out here, right?
I think that Emily has put herself in this position with this reward where I feel like that.
Since when are you saying rewards by you are? This is since when Rob Cesternino has always said that rewards give you nothing.
No, but they spent the night together, and I feel like that there was some colluding that was going on, and I feel like that it didn't happen last season in terms of like the women wanting to stay together, but in terms of like for D potentially looking at like, okay, is there another option of potentially can I defang Drew and Austin potentially with Emily? Like, I think that that D might want to explore that option. I think Jake goes next because I think that I think that for Julie, I think that she wants to keep Katurah around. Yeah. I think that Drew, we know he holds a grudge. He got into the fight with Jake. I feel like that he's not going to forget that anytime soon. So I think that there's a lot going against Jake, who doesn't have his shot in the dark. And I think that he might just be like an easy vote to go out there. And then maybe we see some fireworks at 6.
I mean, one thing to say, Bruce's idol will presumably be going back into the game. So there will be an idol scramble. But yeah, short of anything idolless, I sort of any idolatry there. I think Jake too. I think it's going to be Jake. We've seen a lot of Jake in the last couple episodes. It's always, his position is not improving. I mean, the reason to keep Jake is because he can't win at the end, right? Like no one's voting for Jake at the end. Maybe I said Jake. I think earlier in this podcast, I said Jake had winner upside.
No, I think that Jake, if he gets to the end, I do think that people could vote for him.
Right. And maybe, okay. So maybe there, I think, the likely is Jake.
Okay. All right. So a little bit of what's coming up next week. Okay. On Wednesday night, I'm going to be in New Orleans. Does anybody know what the scone scene is like in New Orleans in the French Quarter? Can you get a scone there? Okay. So we will be in New Orleans to do our live show. So, okay. Got a little bit of a scrambled lineup for you, but hear me out. All right. So Wednesday night, Shannon Gus is going to be live after the episode with the post-game show for Survivor episode 11, and she's going to be with Omer Zahir. We are going to be in New Orleans with our big star-studded live show, rubbing elbows with the Glitterati. If you want to be there with us in person, you still can. RobbinsWebsite.com/events. Also, check out Bryson Wendell's party, a welcome party coming up on Tuesday night. It's going to be a really, really fun week in New Orleans. On Thursday, you will get to watch and hear the recording of our live show from New Orleans. We'll post that on Thursday in place of this podcast. And Stephen has generously agreed to get together with me on Friday when I get home. I think that people get bummed out that they don't get to hear from what? No Stephen for that week?
That's so generous. It's the first day of Hanukkah, so it'll be
first day of Hanukkah.
Big celebration for everybody. Light your candles, burn them bright for this festival of lights.
So on Friday, we'll catch up with Stephen. So On Wednesday night, you'll get Shannon and Omer. After the episode Thursday, you'll see our live show from New Orleans on the recording of it. If you want to be there live, you have to come and buy a ticket and see us in person. And then on Friday, I'll check in with Steven about everything that's going on. Unless it's like a garbage episode, then Steven could just tweet his thoughts and then that's it.
Oh, someone is asking, what is my full All-Star cast? I don't think I have it. I think I actually deleted it and then like emptied it from my trash box. So ashamed. I mean, I kind of am sad because I thought I did a pretty good job.
Smart.
Yeah. No, it's gone. It's gone.
The thing about that, Steven, is you're gonna piss some people off.
Well, that's the thing. That's why I would never say it, is
Yeah.
because like there were people who I'm sure would have expected, to be on it.
Yeah.
Like, well, how could you say this
Yeah,
about me?
Tyson had done that on his podcast, that him and his co-host Riley, they did a draft of like drafting a new era All-Star season.
Yeah.
And Tyson was telling me he got some angry responses from some folks that got snubbed.
Well, everyone thinks that they're going to be cast. Everyone thinks that their story was the real emotional one. And, and even if like you were like, I mean, why has Marty Piombo not been on? Bring back Marty Piombo. He was such a great character, but like, no,
he sort of missed his window.
He did miss his window, but it's like, you just don't know. You just don't know. I will say, and this might invalidate my whole thing. I had Shan in there. So I don't know. A lot of people are very anti-Shan. I thought she was such a great character. I think how could you have an All-Stars from the 40s without Shan? So
I mean, that she does seem like that she would be a no-brainer.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I'm glad you agree. Okay, because I've seen a lot of like.
I haven't done like a list on paper, but I gotta think like certainly like one of the biggest characters, and if she like if you had strong feelings about her, then that's probably all the more reason to bring her back.
Yeah. I mean, people, it did seem like she left the show as sort of this like icon of new Survivor, and then sort of had a significant reputation drop post show. But I didn't totally follow all the ins and outs of that. I loved her.
You're above it. You're above all that.
I'm below it. I'm like, like too tired and beleaguered. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. All right. So there you go. All right. We also are going to have continuing coverage of the Squid Game, the challenge. Stephen was telling me beforehand that he's been checking it out, not caught up totally yet. We had a podcast on Monday, Chappelle and I, on tomorrow at busy day tomorrow at 1 p.m. live. Chappelle and I will be breaking down week 2 of Squid Game, the challenge. I'll also have a podcast. I'll be catching up with Gordon Holmes this week to hear what he has to say about all this Survivor stuff. I'll have a feedback show with Bryce Isaiah on Monday, and then Mari Forth will join me on a patron Q&A, taking your questions from the patrons. So we will be live with that on Friday night. So lots of stuff still to do. Make sure you subscribe. robbinswebsite.com/subscribe. Stephen, what's coming up for you? Nothing. Okay.
Yeah. Christmas shopping.
Yeah. Look at you.
Yeah.
Getting the jump on things.
Yeah. Trying to get ahead of it. Normally I'm like overnighting things the day before. So I'm Julia, my wife, has said like, let's save on our UPS bills this year and try
smart.
Smart.
Okay. Steve, what do you want for this holiday season?
Peace on earth and goodwill towards men.
Wow. Not only men.
Well, sorry, that was goodwill. Oh, yeah. That's a line from one of my favorite movies, Sneakers. And so honestly, I was just trying to highlight the misogyny of the David Strathairn character in that movie.
Yeah. All right. Hit the montage. All right. Take care, everybody. Have a good one. Bye.